The auction hall was alive with noise, filled with voices, lights, and the smell of money and fear. Rich traders shouted over one another, their hands waving in the air as strange alien creatures were dragged onto the stage. Every cage held something: rare four-armed beasts, scaled warriors, even small creatures with glowing skin that could be sold for entertainment or war. Each lot was taken, one by one, for high prices. The audience was hungry, greedy, and eager to show their power. But when the final cage rolled forward, the room suddenly grew quiet. The iron bars rattled, and behind them sat a girl unlike any they had ever seen. Her hair fell like silver threads, her eyes glowing faintly as if lit from inside. Chains covered her arms and legs, and the guards, who pushed the cage forward, kept their distance, their hands shaking on their weapons. The crowd leaned closer, whispering in uneasy tones. Everyone had heard rumors about her. She was not just another alien slave. She was something far more dangerous. She killed her last master, one merchant whispered. They say she cannot be controlled, another added. The auctioneer, a fat man with a nervous smile, raised his voice to hide his own fear. Ladies and gentlemen, our last prize of the night rare, untamed and unlike anything else in this galaxy. A warrior girl from the outer colonies, strong, beautiful, and powerful beyond measure. But his words did not carry the usual excitement. Instead, they were swallowed by the silence of the room. The girl inside the cage lifted her head slowly, her silver eyes sweeping over the crowd. There was no fear in her face, no shame, no weakness. She looked at them the way a hunter might look at prey, cold, steady, and dangerous. The effect was instant. Men who had been bold only minutes before now looked away. A few shifted uncomfortably in their seats. It was as if her gaze itself was a weapon, cutting into their courage. The auctioneer cleared his throat and shouted the first bid. We begin at 100,000 credits. No one moved. The silence was heavier now, pressing on everyone's chest. The girl smirked faintly, the smallest curl of her lips, as if she already knew no one would dare. 100,000, the auctioneer repeated, sweat dripping from his forehead. A chance to own the rarest being of the night. Still no answer. The girl leaned back against the bars, her chains clinking softly. She crossed her legs and tilted her head, amused. It was not the face of a prisoner. It was the face of someone waiting for a challenge. The auctioneer lowered. The price, 90,000, 80. His voice cracked. 70. People in the crowd began to murmur, but none raised their hand. Fear was stronger than greed tonight. She slit your throat the first chance she gets, a man muttered. No cage can hold her, said another. The girl stretched her arms against the chains, testing them, the muscles under her pale skin, flexing with quiet strength. The guards near her flinched back, their weapons rising. The crowd gasped, but she only laughed softly, a sound sharp as broken glass. The auctioneer, now desperate, shouted again. 50,000, 30, 20. His eyes darted around the room, searching for any sign of a bidder. None came. The tension was unbearable. The hall that had moments ago been filled with cheers and laughter was now frozen in unease. Everyone waited for someone else to be foolish enough to raise their hand, but no one moved. The girl's eyes scanned them all, slowly, one by one. When her gaze passed over them, each person looked down quickly, pretending to be busy, as if hiding from her attention would save them. But when her eyes reached the back of the room, they stopped. There, sitting alone in the shadowed corner, was a human man. He was not dressed like a rich trader, nor did he look like a soldier. His clothes were simple, dusty from travel, his face calm, unreadable. Unlike the others, he did not look away. He held her gaze steadily, without fear. The girl's smile faded, replaced with something harder to read. For the first time, she looked uncertain. The auctioneer, nearly in tears, shouted 10,000. For this treasure, 10,000 credits. The room stayed silent. The girl tilted her head toward the man in the corner. A chain rattled softly as she shifted her weight. Her eyes burned into his, daring him, testing him, as if silently asking, "Do you have the courage?" The auctioneer sighed, raising his hand to end the lot unsold. "If there are no bids," a voice cut through the air, calm and steady, "I'll take her." Every head turned, sharply. Gasps filled the hall. It was the human in the back. He stood slowly, his eyes never leaving the girl's. His voice was not loud, not proud, but it carried a weight that silenced every whisper in the room. The auctioneer blinked in shock. You will, at 10,000. "Yes," the man replied simply. The girl's chains rattled again as she leaned closer to the bars, her smile returning, but this time it was different. Not amused, not mocking. Something sharper, more dangerous. A smile that said, "You have no idea what you've just done." The crowd stared in disbelief. The human walked forward, calm and steady, as if stepping into the jaws of a beast, and as the auctioneer called the sale, the alien girl's silver eyes never left him. The last auction lot was no longer a prisoner in a cage. She was now his responsibility, his risk, his fate, and no one in that hall could imagine what would happen next. The auction hall was still buzzing with shock. No one could believe what had just happened. A single human, quiet, unremarkable, and unknown, had claimed the alien girl no one dared to buy. Whispers spread like fire through the crowd. Some thought he was insane. Others thought he had a death wish. A few laughed nervously, certain they had just witnessed a man purchase his own end. The auctioneer, relieved to have finally sold the last lot, shouted the final words with shaky enthusiasm. "Sold, to the human in the back." His voice echoed. But the excitement felt forced. Even he knew this was not a victory. It was a gamble. The human stepped forward, his boots clicking softly against the polished floor. Every pair of eyes followed him. Some were wide with disbelief, others narrowed with suspicion. He carried no visible weapons, no guards at his side. His steps were calm, steady, as though walking into danger was something natural to him. The guards hesitated to unlock the cage. Their hands trembled as they looked at one another, unwilling to release the girl. Her silver eyes gleamed with hunger, like a predator waiting for prey to come close. The human stopped only a few steps away from the bars and looked at her not as an owner to a slave, not as a buyer to an object, but as a man meeting another soul. "Open it," he said. His voice was quiet, but it left no room for argument. The guards swallowed hard. They looked at the auctioneer, who nodded quickly, desperate to end this scene before it turned into bloodshed. One of the guards inserted the key, and with a loud, metallic click, the lock opened. The chains rattled as the alien girl stepped out of the cage. Her movements were smooth, fluid, and confident, like a wild animal that had never been tamed. The crowd leaned back instinctively, some even clutching their weapons. But she did not lash out. Instead, she stood face to face with the human, her lips curved in a slow, sharp smile. "You are either the bravest man in this room," she whispered, her voice low enough for only him to hear, "or the most foolish." The human did not flinch. He looked into her glowing eyes and answered simply, "Maybe both." The crowd gasped when she suddenly moved closer, her chains clinking softly. For a moment it seemed she might strike him, but she only leaned near, his ear, her breath cold against his skin, and whispered, "Do you know what happens to those who try to own me?" He met her gaze without fear. "I didn't buy you to own you," he said. "I took the risk because I saw what no one else did." Her eyes narrowed, searching his face for weakness, for lies, for fear, but she found none. He stood as steady as a mountain, his expression calm, his heart unshaken. For the first time, her smile faded, not out of disappointment, but out of curiosity. The crowd murmured louder now, confused by the strange exchange. Traders shook their heads, certain the human would not live to see tomorrow. Warriors smirked, betting among themselves how long he would survive, yet none dared to interfere. The girl was his problem now. The human reached into his coat and handed the payment to the auctioneer, who snatched it with greedy hands. "She's yours," the auctioneer said quickly, eager to wash his hands of the matter. The girl stepped beside the human as if they had known each other for years. Her chains dragged softly against the floor, but she carried them like ornaments, not restraints. Together they walked out of the auction hall, leaving behind a room filled with whispers, fear, and disbelief. Outside, the air was cooler, quieter, but the tension between them was sharp as a blade. The human walked steadily, his steps measured, while the girl's gaze lingered on him, studying, testing, waiting. Finally, she broke the silence. "Why?" she asked, her voice carrying a mix of curiosity and threat. "Why would you risk everything? For me, you must know what they say about me." "I do," he replied, "but I don't care what they say. I care about what I see." "And what do you see?" She pressed, her tone sharp, her silver eyes narrowing. "A fighter, a survivor, someone too strong to be caged." His words were simple, yet they carried a weight that made her pause. For a long moment, she said nothing. She only stared at him, her eyes glinting in the dim light. Then a small laugh escaped her lips. It was not soft or kind, was sharp, mocking, but also laced with something else. "Respect, maybe you are strange, human," she said finally. "But strangeness is not strength. You will learn that soon." The human gave no reply. He simply continued walking, his calm presence unshaken by her words. That night, they camped outside the city, under the cold glow of alien stars. The girl sat across the fire from him, her chains glowing faintly in the flames. She watched him closely, every movement, every breath. He cooked food, shared water, and spoke nothing more than necessary. His silence was not weakness, it was patience. Finally, she spoke again, her voice softer this time, though still carrying an edge. "Do you fear me, human?" He looked at her across the fire. "Should I?" A slow smile spread across her lips. "Yes." And yet, his calm eyes met hers again, steady as before, and for the first time, she felt something she had not expected: doubt. Doubt about the stories told about him. Doubt about her own certainty. And a dangerous curiosity about what this human truly was. The risk he had taken was not just his. It was now hers as well. The fire had burned low, leaving only glowing embers in the night. The alien girl sat with her knees drawn close, her silver eyes reflecting the faint light. Across from her, the human rested calmly, his back against a rock, his face unreadable. The silence between them was not empty, it was heavy, filled with questions, threats, and unspoken challenges. She studied him carefully. Every other master she had been given to had either treated her with cruelty or with fear. Some had tried to break her, chaining her tighter, starving her until she obeyed. Others had given up quickly, knowing they could not control her rage. But this human, he was different. He neither tried to command her, nor did he cower. He simply existed beside her, unshaken, as if her presence was nothing unusual. "You don't understand what you've done," she said at last, her voice low and sharp. "I am not a pet. I am not a servant. I will not obey you." The human lifted his eyes, the faint firelight glinting in them. "I didn't ask you to." His answer surprised her more than threats ever could. For a moment, she almost laughed. Almost, but instead, she narrowed her eyes. "Then why by me?" "Because you deserve better than a cage," he replied simply. The words struck her harder than she expected. Better than a cage. No one had ever spoken of her like that. No one had cared about what she deserved. Yet he said it so casually, as if it were the most obvious truth in the world. She leaned forward, her voice a whisper filled with venom. "And what if I kill you tonight?" He met her gaze without a flicker of fear. "Then I die knowing I gave you freedom." Her lips parted slightly. This was not the answer she had expected. Not the fear, not the begging, not the arrogance she was used to. Something inside her chest stirred, a strange and uncomfortable feeling she did not recognize. She quickly turned her head away, hiding it behind a mask of disdain. The night passed. Slowly, she did not attack him, not because she couldn't, but because something stopped her. Thing about his calmness, his steady presence. She hated the thought that she hesitated. The next day, they traveled together. He walked with a steady pace, saying little, while she trailed beside him, silent but alert. People on the streets stared at them. Some whispered in fear, others in pity for the man who had doomed himself. But neither of them paid attention. As the sun set again, they reached the edge of a small forest. There they set another fire and shared another silent night. But this time, she spoke first. "You are strange, human," she said, tilting her head as she studied him. "You treat me as if I am equal." "You are," he replied, his tone so casual it almost angered her. "No," she snapped quickly. "I am dangerous. I am hated. I am called a monster." "Only by those who are too afraid to see the truth," he said, looking into the flames. Her hands clenched into fists, chains rattling softly. His words pierced into her like sharp blades, not because they hurt, but because they were too close to something she did not want to admit. Days turned into nights, and nights into days. Slowly, she began to test him. Sometimes she refused to walk. Sometimes she wandered off into the dark to see if he would chase her. Sometimes she spoke cruel words, hoping to crack his calm mask. But every time, he surprised her. He never shouted, never struck her, never chained her. He only waited, patient, silent, steady at first. She told herself he was a fool, weak, blind. But as time passed, she began to see something else. His patience was not weakness, it was strength. His silence was not emptiness, it was control. And his calmness was not ignorance, it was power. She began to notice small things. The way he always placed her share of food first, without question. The way he kept watch at night, without ever asking her to do the same. The way he stood in front of her when strangers came too close, as if shielding her without making it obvious. He did not say it, but his actions told her clearly. He was not afraid of her, and he did not see her as a weapon. One evening, as they camped by a river, she finally asked the question that had been clawing at her mind. "Why do you trust me?" He looked at her, his face calm as always, because trust is the only way forward. Her chest tightened at his words. She wanted to argue, to laugh, to tell him he was wrong. But the truth was, a part of her wanted to believe him. That night, when he closed his eyes and drifted to sleep, she sat beside him, her silver eyes glowing faintly in the dark. She could have killed him easily. His throat was exposed, his chest rising and falling softly. One strike, and it would be over. Freedom would be hers, but she didn't. Instead, she sat there, staring at him, the question echoing in her mind. Why not? Why was she still here? Why did she feel something stir inside her when he looked at her without fear? She hated that question. She hated him for making her ask it. But more than that, she hated herself for not knowing the answer. For the first time in her life, the alien girl felt something stronger than rage. She felt uncertainty, and that uncertainty was more dangerous than any chain. The journey grew harder with each passing day. The road twisted through wild lands where bandits hunted the weak and strange beasts prowled in the shadows. The alien girl walked beside the human, her chains still clinking softly, though he had loosened them so she could move more freely. She noticed something curious. He never tied her at night, never locked her, never tried to keep her under guard. It was as if he trusted her completely, or as if he didn't care if she left. But she could not understand him. Why give her freedom when she had given him no reason to? Why place his life in her hands again and again? One evening, as the sun bled red across the horizon, the girl tested him. She vanished into the forest, moving silently, swift as a shadow. She could have run forever, disappeared into the wild where no one would find her. But she didn't. Instead, she hid nearby, watching him, waiting for his reaction. The human did not panic. He did not shout or chase after her. Instead, he calmly set up camp, lit a fire, and prepared food. When night came, he placed her share of food beside the fire and said aloud, "Though she was nowhere in sight, if you return, this is yours." Then he leaned back, silent, and closed his eyes to rest. The girl frowned from the shadows. He knew she was watching, yet he showed no fear, no desperation. He trusted her to come back, or he didn't care if she didn't. The thought unsettled her. She stayed hidden until dawn, then walked back into the camp without a word. He only looked at her once, nodded slightly, and handed her water. That was all. Another day she tried something else. When he was asleep, she stood above him with a sharpened stone in her hand. One strike, and she would be free. She raised it, her silver eyes glowing with conflict. But his face was calm even in sleep, steady, unguarded. Slowly, her grip loosened, the stone fell from her hand, and she sat down beside him instead. She hated how much it frustrated her. Why couldn't she kill him? The third test came when trouble found them. They were crossing a narrow valley when 3 armed bandits blocked their path. Their leader sneered at the human, pointing at the alien girl. "That one's dangerous. We've heard the stories. Step aside, human, and we'll take her. You might live if you do." The girl smirked, curious to see what he would do. Most masters would have handed her over, glad to be rid of the risk. But the human stepped forward, placing himself between her and the bandits. His voice was steady, quiet, but it carried like steel. "She's with me. If you want her, you'll have to go through me." The girl blinked, stunned. He had just chosen to protect her, knowing full well she could defend herself. The bandits laughed, thinking him a fool. They attacked. The fight was quick, brutal. The human fought with calm precision, not with wild strength, but with practiced skill. He moved like water, every strike controlled, every motion balanced. When the last bandit fell, groaning in the dirt, the girl stared at him with new eyes. He was not weak, he was not a fool, he was dangerous. In a way she had not understood until now. Later that night, as they rested by the fire, she finally spoke, her voice low. "Why?" He looked at her, not pretending to misunderstand. "Because I said you're with me, and I meant it." Her lips pressed into a thin line. She hated how those words stirred something deep inside her. No one had ever stood in front of her like that, not for power, not for money, not for control. He had done it because he believed it was right, but she was not ready to admit what it meant. Instead, she pushed harder. "You're a fool. Protecting me will only destroy you. One day, you'll regret it." "Maybe," he said, his eyes fixed on the flames. "But trust always comes with risk." That word, trust, echoed in her mind. Long after he spoke it, the next day, when they reached the edge of a ruined town, she noticed the way people stared at them. They looked at her with fear, with hatred, with disgust. But when they looked at the human, their eyes were filled with pity. Poor man, doomed man, walking beside a monster. She saw it, she knew it, yet he didn't flinch. He walked beside her, as if their stares meant nothing, as if she were no different from him. That night, as she sat by the fire, she finally whispered something she had never said before. "You are strange, human." He gave the smallest smile. "So are you." For the first time, she laughed, not sharp and mocking, but quiet, genuine and soft. The sound startled even her. She quickly covered it, frowning again, but it was too late. The human had heard it, and his smile grew a little wider. She turned away, frustrated at herself. This bond forming between them was dangerous, far more dangerous than any chain. Because chains could be broken, but trust could change everything. And she wasn't sure if she was ready for that. Change or terrified of it. The bond between them had grown, though neither admitted it. The alien girl still walked with pride, still carried herself like a weapon that could never be broken. But inside her mind, questions grew stronger with each day. Why did this human trust her? Why did he risk himself for her, when everyone else only feared her? The more she tried to push him away, the closer she felt drawn to him. But fate did not allow them peace for long. It happened on the 5th night, after leaving the ruined town. The sky was heavy with clouds, the air sharp with the scent of rain. They had made camp in a shallow cave, the fire crackling low between them. The girl was awake, watching the flames, when she felt it, a tremor in the air, a shift in the silence. Her instincts screamed danger. She rose quickly, eyes narrowing. Shadows moved at the mouth of the cave. Figures slipped from the darkness, armored and armed, surrounding them. A dozen bounty hunters, their weapons gleaming. The leader stepped forward, his voice cold and confident. "Step aside, human. That creature belongs to us. There's a fortune on her head. Live or dead. Be smart, and we'll let you walk away." The human stood slowly, calm as ever. He looked at the hunters, then at the girl, who had already tensed like a coiled spring. He knew what she wanted to fight, to kill, to unleash her fury. But before she moved, he stepped forward, placing himself between her and the hunters. "She's not yours," he said quietly. "She's with me." The hunters laughed. "You think you can stop us? You're only one man." The girl's silver eyes flashed. "Let me handle them," she hissed, her voice sharp with hunger for battle. But the human shook his head. "Not yet." The hunters lunged, and the fight exploded. The human moved like water again, striking with precision, blocking blows, forcing the attackers back. But there were too many. Blades cut into his arm, a club struck his ribs, and blood spread across his side. Still, he fought on, refusing to fall. The girl's chest tightened as she watched. For the first time, she felt something she had not expected: fear. Not fear for herself, but fear for him. She had seen countless battles, had seen men die without blinking. But seeing him bleed, seeing him surrounded, something inside her snapped her. Chains clattered as she stepped forward, her voice like thunder. "Enough." The hunters turned, grinning. "What will you do, monster? You're still bound." Her silver eyes blazed. Energy crackled through her body, the air vibrating with power. With a roar, she pulled against her chains, and for the first time, they shattered. Metal fragments flew like sparks, scattering across the cave. The hunters froze, shock painted across their faces. The girl moved faster than their eyes could follow. In a blur of light and fury, she struck. Blades shattered, bodies flew, the cave filled with screams. Fire seemed to burst from her skin. Her power unleashed after being caged for so long. The hunters tried to fight, but they were nothing compared to her. Within moments, they were broken and fleeing, crawling into the night, leaving only silence behind. The cave stank of blood and smoke. The girl stood in the center, her chest heaving, her silver eyes burning like fire. She turned slowly, her gaze finding the human. He was still standing, though barely. Blood ran down his arm, his chest rose and fell with effort. Yet his eyes met hers calmly, as steady as always. For a long moment, neither spoke. The girl felt her power still surging inside her, wild and untamed, but when she looked at him, it calmed. The rage that had defined her for so long softened into something else, something she could not name. She stepped closer, her chains broken, her freedom hers at last. She could leave now. She could disappear into the stars, never to be caged again. But when she looked at him, she realized she didn't want to. "You are a fool," she whispered, her voice trembling, though not with anger. "You risked everything for me. You bled for me. Why?" The human, wounded but unbowed, gave her the smallest smile. "Because you were worth the risk." Her breath caught. No one had ever said those words to her. Not master, not enemy, not even ally worth the risk. Slowly, almost against her will, she reached out and touched his arm, steadying him. Her chains were gone, her strength was hers again, yet she chose not to leave. She chose to stand beside him. For the first time in her life, she did not feel like a prisoner, or a weapon, or a monster. For the first time, she felt seen. The rain began to fall outside the cave, washing away the blood, cooling the night. The human sat, his breath heavy, and the alien girl sat beside him. She looked at him, not with the eyes of a captive or an enemy, but with something new, something dangerous and fragile. Trust that the auction had ended days ago, but the true gamble had just begun. A human and an alien girl, bound not by chains, but by choice, walking into a future no one could have predicted. And though the galaxy still whispered her name as a curse, from that night forward, she would carry his words instead. She was worth the risk.